All right, welcome everyone. We're going to kick off our first school board meeting of 2022. Welcome back. Happy New Year. I always like at the beginning of a new year to take the opportunity to share some gratitude, and I'd like to share that gratitude with the administration, the teachers, our support staff, our students and parents in attendance here virtually and in person for living the mission of the school district and showing resilience in these very challenging times to be in a school district. But you guys are doing just an incredible job keeping the kids in school, healthy and learning exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So with that, we'll kick off our meeting, our Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 regular board meeting. We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The mission of the school district of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. Let's do roll call.
Mr. Needleman.
Here.
Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green.
Here.
Mrs. Hubley.
Here.
Mrs. Hughes.
Here.
Mrs. Lipinski.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky.
Here.
Mr. Bedard.
Here. Just one procedural announcement. The board at its discretion may videotape all or any portion of public board meetings subject to the limitations set forth in policy 006.2, broadcasting of meetings. Board meetings will be broadcast on Friday afternoon following the board meeting. First up, we're going to go to reports and information. And we have an update from Ms. Casabon for the EEHSP and SDST. I think, Chris, you are virtual tonight. Could elevate Chris Casabon. Yeah. I don't. We got it? Okay. Hey, Chris, can you unmute? We're ready.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Hi, good evening. How are you all?
Hi.
Hi, so I'm going to be reading the reports from the MPA, the EEHSP, as well as the secondary home and school, okay? The MPA is in the process of planning their annual Black History program. More information will be forthcoming via school weekly e-blasts. The next MPA meeting is Thursday, March 3rd at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom, and all are welcome to join. The EEHSP report, Enfield and Herdenheim parents gave generously towards holiday gifts for the teachers, principals, and support staff. Over $8,800 was given. They would like to thank the parents for stepping up to say thank you to their wonderful teachers at Enfield and Herdenheim for all that they do. The EEHSP is proud to once again be able to fund the author illustrator for Enfield and Herdenheim, which will be on March 8th and will be Zachariah O'Hara. The next Dine and Donate at Carla's Kitchen will be on January 19th. Their pizza kit fundraiser will be back in February. It was a huge hit last year, and more info will be out in the coming weeks. The talent show is scheduled for Saturday, March 5th, with 2 shows at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Video auditions are due by January 31st. Directions for submitting auditions are outlined on their website and Facebook page. The carnival is scheduled for Saturday, May 21st at the new Enfield. Jonathan Bykowski is this year's chairperson, and they are looking forward to partnering again with Mr. Mead and the middle school and high school students to pull this off. Anyone interested on volunteering for the carnival can email volunteers@eehsp.org. The next general meeting will be held on Monday, January 24th at 7 p.m. via Zoom, and the Zoom link will be found on their website at eehsp.org and their Facebook page. The secondary HSP. Due to a conflict with rescheduled district events, tomorrow night's secondary HSP general meeting featuring the Be Smart Gun Safety Program has been rescheduled for Wednesday, February 16th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Please keep an eye out for the link to register for the rescheduled event in the middle school and high school e-blasts. Be Smart Gun Safety is a program that focuses on gun safety in the home, recognizing the roles of guns in suicide and responsible behaviors around gun safety in the home. In addition to the presentation, we will briefly review committee updates at the February meeting. Please look at our website and Facebook pages to learn about ways to get involved in the secondary home and school. We invite and welcome everyone in the secondary community to please join us at our meetings and get involved in our committees. We value you and your participation. Learn about events and news in the middle school and high school weekly e-blasts. And that concludes our reports.
Bond. Next up, we have a high school report from Ms. Madison Dunlop.
Hi, everyone. At Enfield, they started new clubs, which are Science Explorers and the Drama Club. On January 8th, they hosted their farewell tour at the old Erdenheim and had an open house of their gorgeous new building. Erdenheim this past month, 5th grade partnered with a former teacher, Mr. Hicks, and a resurgent church to donate winter clothes and toiletries to the homeless. Mr. Hicks showed his appreciation and threw a pizza party for the 5th graders. On January 4th, Erdenheim teamed up with Enfield to support Bach Martin Elementary. This school tragically lost students in a house fire earlier this month, and Erdenheim staff wrote letters and notes to support and donated their first Friday donuts as well as coffee to their staff. Over at the middle school on the 11th, they had their winter chorus and band concert. Boys basketball, cheer, wrestling started this month. The girls basketball team won the MCAA small bracket tournament. The middle school won first prize in the Montgomery County IU's Dream It, Design It competition for the design of a new display for the Elmwood Park Zoo. The middle school began a weekly TV show using their new TV studio, and they named it Spartan Spotlight. And then their spring musical Matilda will be performed on March 18th through 20th, and they just recently started rehearsals for that. At the high school on the 13th, we had our chorus and band concerts. On January 14th, we held a booster clinic, and final exams are coming up and will be the 25th through the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. We'll go into some policy committee meeting reports. We'll start with the policy committee meeting report from Ms. Carla Green.
Good evening, everyone. The policy committee met on Thursday, January 6th to continue the review of all district policies under the guidance of PSBA, which is our Pennsylvania School Boards Association. In continuation of our December meeting, we reviewed policies discussed last month, all that are on tonight's agenda for a first reading. We also finalized policy 832, educational equity, which is the new policy we're adding this year. And policy 832 was drafted by PSBA in June 2020 to assist districts in creating clear expectations for administration and staff in meeting the goal of serving all students well. The policy provides a requirement that districts create and adhere to an equity plan and gather input from the community and assess the report publicly annually on progress. We are bringing this policy forward today. We also discussed policy 903, which focused on public participation at board meetings. Recent guidance from our solicitor is the basis for the changes to this policy, and the revised policy is on the agenda tonight. And finally, we reviewed a long list of 100-level policies that have been reviewed by PSBA. These policies are on the agenda for a first reading. They all have only minor grammatical changes. The second half of the 100-level policies that have more substantive changes will be reviewed and discussed on January 26th at our next policy committee meeting. Thank you.
And let's head over to an update from the Academic Affairs Committee, meeting report from Dr. F.
The Academic Affairs Committee met on Thursday, January 13th, and the topic of discussion was the school calendar for the 2022-23 year, 2023-24 year, and the 24-25 school years. To assist with the creation of the school calendars, the results of a parent and staff survey were used. The results of this survey follows. School start. There was a 63.9% response for beginning school after Labor Day. Conference schedule. The response on this particular item was split. Therefore, moving forward, the plan is for early dismissal the Friday before Thanksgiving for the elementary, Enfield and Erdenheim, early dismissal for all schools, elementary, middle, and high school for Monday and Tuesday of the Thanksgiving week. Wednesday through Friday will be days off for the holiday. Spring break, 67.6% responded for a full week off. This has been planned in all 3 of the upcoming school year calendars. For those of you who want to secure summer plans, the last student day for the 2021-22 school year is June 14th. Early dismissal days will be June 12th, 13th, and 14th for all students. This will be for exam days for the secondary level. Kids View. Kids View will be available for full days when there is no school. Currently, the district and Kids View are continuing their discussions on half-day options. It's a hope that this decision will be made soon. This concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you for the detailed report, and we'll have any commentary questions when we vote on those calendars coming up later. So thank you for that. We'll move on to our superintendent report from Dr. Mary Jo Yannicone.
Thanks, Mr. Bedard, and Happy New Year to everyone here and over Zoom. It's nice to see you virtually or in person. I want to begin just by talking a little bit about our Enfield schools open houses last weekend. I want to thank our facilities team and our director, Craig Thorne, for their quick work clearing sidewalks and preparing Enfield School for our open house last weekend, as well as the team from Enfield, led by Dr. Markle, who provided a welcoming environment at our new K2 building for the community. We had over 500 visitors to the old building from as far away as Florida. We had a woman who flew in just for one day to see her alma mater. We had teachers and administrators. We had graduates from the late 40s, attendees from the late 40s, and well into their 90s, as well as students who left their classrooms in March 2020 for the last time, not realizing they'd be leaving Enfield for the last time. At the new building, we had over 450 visitors, many of whom commented on the wonderful natural light and openness of our elementary school. Over the past week, our facilities team and construction company have begun to take apart the interior of the building and prep it for demolition. In the next few weeks, the community will observe the building coming down in pieces. Bricks from the building, the 2 front doors, and the etched top stone that says Enfield School will be saved and held by the district. We know that this will be an emotional time for many in our community and plan to share a tribute to the original school at our next board meeting. School safety. I want to thank the community for your strong support of our administration last month when nationwide school safety concerns were prevalent as a result of social media postings and the experience we had with an internal threat to safety at the high school. Steve Chinta, our supervisor of campus safety, has collaborated with regional resources over the past month, and this morning, Don Fantry, who is the Montgomery County School Safety Specialist, met with the administration to review and provide feedback on all of our district procedures. Our conversation included our emergency response procedures and communication plans. Don was very complimentary of our team and community and encouraged us to continue to collaborate well with our local police, fire, and ambulance leaders for the benefit of campus safety. As was mentioned just a moment ago by Dr. Etlin, this evening's agenda includes a motion to approve the school calendars for the next 3 years. Last month, we surveyed staff and families to determine whether there were clear preferences in a few areas of the calendar. With 700 responses, we were able to gather a pretty solid picture of what our community prefers, and these calendars reflect those survey results. We'll continue to start school after Labor Day each September, to offer a full week of spring break, and to finish the year no later than the second full week in June. We've adjusted Thanksgiving week conferences to allow for half days of school for students on Monday and Tuesday of that week, and we've added 2 snow days to the calendar in each of the next 3 years. By providing calendars across 3 years, we retain the ability to make adjustments if needed, but communicate expected dates with families for planning purposes. I want to thank the community for applying to the survey and for your input in developing the calendars. Next on the agenda is our health and safety plan. Last week, I sent an update to families that included the draft second semester health and safety plan. I want to thank our health team and administration for their input into the plan, which incorporates the guidance of the CDC, the Pennsylvania Department of Health, CHAP Policy Lab, and the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, all of whom revised guidance in the past few weeks. I realize that we are all growing weary of the pandemic and the mitigation measures in place, but we continue to prioritize maintaining in-person learning and a full complement of extracurricular activities for students in the plan. Throughout the spring semester, we'll continue to meet weekly with the Office of Public Health and with CHAP doctors to ensure that we are following the updates in the guidance, and we'll continue to utilize the dashboard to notify the community of our current cases across the district by school and department. Some good news out of the high school. An agenda item tonight is the overnight trip to Hershey for some of our high school students involved in Deca. You'll notice there are actually 2 overnight trips. We're resuming those overnight trips this winter and spring. This school year was the first year for Springfield's participation in Deca, which is an international business organization that promotes business education and leadership skills among high school students. This year, Springfield had an impressive 25 students who will advance to the statewide competition in Hershey, PA in February. It's quite an accomplishment in their first year as an organization. Winners in that event will have the opportunity to compete in nationals in April. Please join me in congratulating our regional winners and wishing them all the best in states, which start February 16th, as you'll see on the agenda. Winter concerts. I'd like to thank our music teachers across the district for their hard work in preparing our choirs and bands for their first in-person concerts in 2 years. Last week, we enjoyed performances from the middle school chorus and band and high school chorus, and tomorrow and Thursday night, we'll be treated to our Erdenheim choirs and bands and high school bands. These are limited ticket events due to social distancing, but they will be live streamed over YouTube for those who cannot attend in person. And finally, in my report, I want to just highlight our upcoming committee meetings. We have a few items, and these are all virtual and all open to the public. On January 26th, as Ms. Green mentioned, we'll hold our next policy meeting, which will focus on 100 level policies, for which we have received some more substantive changes by PSBA as compared to those on the agenda this evening. Tonight's agenda has a long list, as Ms. Green mentioned, and again, I'll reiterate, those only have minor grammatical changes. On February 3rd, we have a property meeting scheduled to provide an update on the structural assessment of the bus garage, the Church Road project, and proposed capital improvements for the summer. On February 7th, we have an academic affairs meeting at which Dr. Johnston will provide an update on our students' mid-year growth in math and reading since her last report in September. All of our students this month are engaged in their mid-year assessments. And so we'll have that report for you early next month. And finally, on February 10th, we have a finance committee meeting at which Ms. Green will present a first look at the 22-23 budget, and Mr. Oliver will share our 5-year cybersecurity plan for the district. In early October, President Biden initiated the K-12 Cybersecurity Act, which requires that districts take a more robust look at their cybersecurity plans. And I want to compliment Mr. Oliver. This morning, he presented his 5-year plan to our administrative team, and we believe that it is ready for your viewing and consideration as we look forward. These cybersecurity plans are the result of an unfortunately high number of cyber attacks on public school districts across the country over the last few years. And then I'm going to transition to the spotlight. I'll have a presentation to share if I can share my screen. So I'm just waiting for the ability to screen share. Okay. Terrific, thank you. Okay. Hide those controls and I'll bring this up. So for board members, if it's easier for you to see and you want to move around, that's no problem. But I've also shared it with you in advance, so you may have that in front of you. So it's my pleasure to present our equity action plan for the next 3 years. Our theme for the plan, as you see there in the corner, is a multicolored tree, and that tree is rooted and clearly rooted. Our theme is a community of caring, as represented by the multicolored tree, rooted in equitable practices. So just a brief summary of the audit process that we went through over the last year. I'm very grateful to the equity team. Mr. Bedard, you began with gratitude. I'm very grateful to the equity team for meeting on a monthly basis over this last very challenging year in order to focus on our equity audit in the midst of everything else that we were doing. We conducted a 1-year internal analysis, and that was comprised of approximately 50 members of our K through 12 staff from all groups, all offices, all staffing groups participated in this internal analysis. In addition, over the summer, we decided that we wanted to have an external analysis, and that was conducted by the University of Pennsylvania's research team, with whom we work, the Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence. So they sent a team of 4 researchers to meet with students, staff, faculty, as well as our administrative team and the school board. They made observations of classrooms. They took tours of the buildings over 5 days. So they were here from morning until night for 5 days in early November to conduct their external analysis. The findings and the action steps I'm going to share with you. They were drafted and reviewed by the team. They were presented last week to the public at our Equitable Practices meeting, at which we received written feedback from the community. And then hopefully tonight, the board will vote on the adoption of this plan for the next 3 years. So we had 4 core questions. The first question was focused on the understanding of the community with regard to how we define the equity work of the district. Feedback from the community just highlights were that we would like a more robust data analysis system in place to be able to disaggregate our data and really drill down on areas of focus. There was a point of feedback from the community that while we do understand as a community that what equity is, that we want to make sure that it's not a meritocracy, that it's not just about access and opportunity, but it's about getting measurable results for all of our students. There was some feedback about communication and that we want to do a better job of communicating in an ongoing way our efforts and our progress. Our staff asked for practical classroom applications to the theory we have been presenting to them over the last 8 to 10 years. And then they'd like to build a shared understanding of what the purpose and the value is of equity work. And so in this area, we have part of our plan is focused on mission and purpose. You have tonight our interest in adopting an educational equity policy. We have identified an administrator responsible for conducting an ongoing review and analysis of data and a person who would lead the equity action plan. And that position is our Director of Support Services, which we are currently in the process of interviewing. We want to create a more robust system for collecting, reviewing, and disseminating all relevant data to the community. We want to communicate the purpose and goals of the equity action plan broadly and consistently to all constituents. We want to elicit feedback from students, staff, and families on a regular basis. And finally, we want to ensure that access and opportunity yield measurable outcomes. Again, moving away from that concept of meritocracy. Our second question of the 4 focused on what is the information and resources that we make available to families? To what extent is that understandable to all families? And the feedback we received was, and I want to share, not all the feedback was constructive criticism. There was plenty of positive feedback, but I'm concentrating here on the areas for growth. So there was some feedback on information overload, that families are receiving SMORs and emails and school messengers from a variety of sources, and that it can be overwhelming to families. We also received feedback about the unwritten rules of placement and the trajectory that early school placement has on long-term academic success, both for our new and our existing families. We had feedback about communication for progress and services in transition for families of children with IEPs. We had some feedback for our home and school associations about communication accessibility and frequency. They would like to hear more frequently from our parent groups. We got some feedback about EduSpeak. It'd be great if we could try to use language that is common to all, and that we would use a consistent online platform. And so our second theme of the action plan is in communication and engagement. We want to create a K-12 course overview with language accessibility that really defines and explains for families the decisions they're making. We want to create a feedback and communication system for parent-teacher conferences so that families can help us to hear how they're experiencing our conferences in the fall and in the spring. We're going to work to simplify and focus our communication to families, improve our website's accessibility and ease of use, utilize the analytics that exist to assess the impact our communication has on all of our students and families. And then we want to collaborate with our parent organizations to develop a roadmap for decision-making K-12 that families and students understand and that then we can convey to new families. Our third question focused on roadblocks and barriers and biases that families may have experienced or witnessed as members of our community. And here we have some difficult truths for us to take a look at. We continue to have overrepresentation in special education of students of color and underrepresentation in honors and AP courses at the high school of students of color. We have seen and heard from families about economic barriers to extracurricular participation and accountability and safety, specifically for our Black and LGBTQ students in school and in the community. And again, we heard about those unwritten rules of access to higher level courses, that families really want to understand the long-term impacts of placement decisions that they are agreeing to or making as a family. We had some feedback about consistency between our survey of belonging results and the observations that some members of the community have day to day. And we heard about some elementary cliques among the parents. The parents talked here about just the challenge as a new member of the community, when so many members of the community are longstanding residents, that it can be difficult to break into those social circles. And then we did have a few positives that I really wanted to highlight, that there was a lot of feedback on the strong student-teacher relationships and a lot of positive feedback from our EL population on the robust translation services that have been in place in the last few years. And I really appreciated that for our administrative team, because we've been working at a team in that area in particular for some time, as our English language learners population has grown significantly in recent years. So the third area of the action plan is accessibility and inclusion. So we want to work to train our multi-tiered systems of support teams to utilize their process to improve our systems of identification and readiness so that we do a better job of identifying all students who should qualify, whether it's for special education or for gifted services. We want to explore scholarships and reduced fees and sibling childcare to improve access to extracurriculars. This was an area where we heard from many of our high school students who spoke about the fact that they would love to be involved in some activities, but there are either financial barriers due to some of the extra costs, in many cases booster costs to activities, or they just need to go home and take care of their siblings. And so if there were childcare options for their younger siblings, they would be interested in participating in activities. We want to utilize an online platform for feedback from students and families. This is really connected to that communication area of the plan. And we want to improve safety for our marginalized students, including students of color and LGBTQ students. And finally, we want to work with our parent organizations to grow the ambassadors program, which we kicked off this year, so that families and students new to the district learn and understand how to navigate the systems in our district. The ambassadors program was something that Dr. Johnston and I worked on with our parent advisory late last spring and kicked off this fall so that existing families could serve as sponsors or host families for new families to really help them to understand how things work in a new school district. It can be overwhelming for new families. And so we're eager to continue to grow that program. And our final question, question 4, was focused on resources. So how are we allocating resources to make sure that every student gets what they need? Some of the feedback we were receiving was that there was a strong interest in enrichment opportunities and support opportunities for our K-5 students after school. Our staff would love to have training on issues of equity for the non-teaching staff. So many times our non-teaching staff are not here for professional development days, and they would like to be able to participate. So we're going to work on that over the next few years. There was a strong interest in mental health support for all staff and students, and this is an area where we are spending considerable attention as we plan the use of our federal dollars through ARPSR. Students talk to us about a desire for more discussion-based classes, more representation of marginalized groups in the curriculum, and more time to discuss and cover difficult and contemporary topics. And the staff, and this is a nice pairing. The students would like more conversation, and the staff would like more training on how to have those difficult conversations. So we feel we have some real parity here between what students are asking for and what staff are asking for. So we will continue to work on that. And a positive I wanted to share was that we heard from all corners, students, staff, and parents, that there is strong support of students when needs arise. They really feel like the district is responsive as needs occur. So in the resources and results section of the action plan, we want to identify, review, and report on the primary indicators of growth and achievement, support conversations in the classroom that help students to be prepared for these difficult topics and conversations around equity, provide enrichment opportunities at the elementary level after school, and provide training for all district staff on equitable practices that are able to be implemented in the classroom and across district offices. And then this was not a core question, but it was something that we always look at, and that is representation. So we know that representation is important for students, and we shared where we are with regard to that in our district. So we looked statistically at our student population and our staff population across the district and by building, and by group, administration, support staff, and teaching staff. The points of identity and the data tracking, currently you only really have racial identity as a data point. We do not have any other identity data points currently available. Currently, the clearance forms are what are used for racial identity. And so that's the only way we can look at representation currently. So we have some gaps in representation, most significantly for our Hispanic and multiracial students. But we have other areas where we want to continue to grow, and you can see that here. We want to continue to have broad representation that, to the extent possible, mirrors our student population. And then we want to make sure that we can figure out ways to incorporate non-racial aspects of representation in hiring so that students really see themselves and see opportunities for their future in the professionals with whom they come in contact on a regular basis. So in representation, this is the last area of the action plan. We want to continue to communicate and implement the recommended strategies for a diverse representative workforce across the district. We're going to continue to participate in recruitment fairs, collaborate with local universities, provide resources to staff and administration, and allocate resources to consult with others with expertise in recruitment and retention. And so this is our entire equity action plan for the next 3 years. How will we be evaluated? We're going to ask for feedback from the community, staff, and student surveys, as well as a self-check by the equity team. And we will, in each one of those bubbles, so not a total evaluation, but for each category and each bubble within that category, we will have a needs focus and attention, hopefully not, in progress, hopefully for most, and meeting expectations, hopefully for many. And then lastly, just want to share, also on the board agenda tonight is related policy 832 on educational equity. And as has already been mentioned by Ms. Green, PSBA created this policy in June of 2020. It provides our district authority to require regular audits of equitable practices the development of equity action plans, and regular reporting of progress to the public. Our policy draft provides for an audit every 3 years, followed by a revised action plan based on that audit to coincide with our every 3-year comprehensive planning process, which the Department of Education requires of us anyway. So it's a nice pairing of the equity action plan and the comprehensive planning process. And then our policy draft requires an annual public update on the progress. And certainly the board could at any time ask for an update over the course of that year, but at a minimum, no matter who's on the board, based on the policy, and no matter who's sitting in this chair, the requirement is that there's an annual public update. And that concludes my focus, Spartan Spotlight. Thank you, Maddie. Glad to hear the middle school is using it too. Spartan Spotlight on the Equity Action Plan. And that concludes my report.
Wow, that was a lot.
I know.
Thank you. It was good to see the results of the audit and that will be incorporated into the action plan. And we'll have time for comment when we come up on voting for that action plan. And even though it was a few minutes ago, we should acknowledge the students, both their performances for all of the musical performances, pretty incredible, and the Deca students, so many representing school districts so well in Harrisburg, no, Hershey for the regional competition. That's great. All right, we are going to move on to public comments on agenda items. Just a reminder, comments should be limited to 3 minutes. And if you could just state your name and where you reside in the district, and then we'll make sure we have time for everybody here.
So first up on the sign-up sheet is Cindy Dowling.
Hello.
Thank you. I know I have to talk quickly, so I want to make sure you can hear me clearly. All right. I'm Cindy. I live in Winmore. I've lived in Springfield Township for about 19 years now. All of my 5 children have attended Springfield at one time or another. Right now, my husband and I have 3 in township schools. I keep hearing about science and how schools are following the science, and I'm wondering about facts. So the youngest COVID death in all of Montgomery County was 25. Average age deaths in Springfield, Montgomery County from COVID is 78. The minimum age of anyone from Springfield Township dying was 38. In all of Montgomery County, the average is 79. Section 4 of the Springfield Township Board Policy and Procedures says, in adopting a policy or procedure that neither the board nor the administration intends a result that is absurd, impossible of execution, or unreasonable, that neither the board nor the administration intends to violate federal or state constitutions or any other applicable law. Mandates violate our constitutional rights. Given these facts that I presented, not allowing masks to be optional is absurd and unreasonable, which goes against your policies and procedures. We are not saying people who want to wear masks can't wear them. We're just saying there needs to be an option. In December, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that the Pennsylvania Health Secretary does not have the authority to mandate masks. Governor Wolf ended the COVID emergency for Pennsylvania in June of 2021. On January 17th, yesterday, Governor Wolf gave the decision of masking back to school districts. Your health and safety plan and Governor Wolf suggest following the CDC guidelines, where the CDC and the MCOPH both recommend masking. The last time I recommended a movie or a dinner to a friend, that did not mean I was mandating it. I didn't think that they were just going to go with it, and I wasn't going to punish them if they didn't do what I wanted. What? Well, now you just took away my time for throwing me off. Sorry. We believe that the ESSER funds and the health and safety plan that was submitted for the funds are the only reason why our children are still forced to wear masks, be contact traced, regularly COVID tested, rapid COVID tested, social distance, and constant pressure to vaccinate. The health and safety plan should be immediately changed to allow masks to be optional. By optional, we mean no mask, no protective plastic desks, things at desks, no face shields. The COVID testing to stay and the mask to stay now, social distancing and pressures to vaccinate needs to end. We will not let this continue until 2024. As of today, our children are no longer wearing masks in school. I'm speaking today representative of many like-minded families in our districts, residents of the township, as well as students who have all joined in a movement to end the mask mandates, who will no longer allow the absurd and unreasonable mandates. I have copies of how Bucks County handled their mask optional stance, so that they still receive their ESSER funds. Now my time's up. Thanks. I have copies of how Bucks County handled it in their wording so that they still receive their ESSER funds. I'd love to give them to you if you would like to review them. Does anybody, can I, thank you. I also have the optional thing that they give to the employees.
Jeff Cornu, Surrey Road in Orland. Since early in 2020, masks have been a devolving science, with government officials, scientists, and doctors changing their positions on the effectiveness of masks. We have seen wave after wave of the virus spike and then decline, with the usual bureaucrats pointing to their mask and social distancing policies as the reason for the declines, rather than the common pattern of waves that most viruses follow. Mandatory masking is hurting our children in ways that we cannot even fully comprehend yet. Our kindergartners and first graders have never even experienced what it's like to have a natural social interactions in a school setting, where they can fully read body language with facial expressions, see the way that staff and peers pronounce words, and use that experience to build their own vocabularies and express their emotions. If the district fails to meet its goal of 80% of students K through 2 being at grade level, will we simply be told to accept that the failure is due to COVID-19? The one lesson society has taught children throughout this pandemic is fear. We have taught our children to fear something that since the beginning of the pandemic has posed a virtually non-existent risk to healthy children. That fear has been pushed by just about every media outlet, social media site, and government agency is being projected onto our healthy children who are at more risk from seasonal flu than COVID-19. Any medical opinion that does not fit the official 3-letter agency narrative is quickly demonized and censored, rather than openly discussed on merit as science would require. That speaks volumes. A short time ago, my daughter, who was in kindergarten, came home from school and told me that Mr. Fleming made an announcement to the school that students had to wear masks while outside on the playground and that people are getting sick because they're not wearing their masks outside. This obviously stoked curiosity and fear in her. While I most certainly took into consideration that I was getting information from a 5-year-old, I was also extremely disappointed that I had to explain that there was no danger of getting sick from not wearing a mask around a group of children on a playground. Disappointed that someone my child should be able to trust would betray that trust with a speculative falsehood that fans the flames of fear. If this statement was in fact made to the entire student body of Enfield, can anyone here point me in the direction of a scientific paper, peer-reviewed publication, case study, or even an anecdotal news report of an outbreak in our youngest population, stemming from an outdoor exposure, which resulted in the hospitalization of otherwise healthy children? At the end of the day, parents should be afforded the right to choose whether to put a mask on their children. Parents have every right to send their child to school in a mask. But if they truly believe that masks are effective and necessary to prevent transmission, it shouldn't matter to that parent whether other children are masked. In my opinion, to argue otherwise goes against a sincere belief in mask effectiveness and common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Art Caruso, Springfield Township resident living in Orland and father of 3 boys. While I have chosen to homeschool my children, we are actively involved in the township, including school athletics. So first, I want to thank you, sincerely thank you for supporting the athletics this year to support the student athletes to enable them to compete in the winter sports. and to do so maskless. I must say that for me and my family, this truly meant a lot. So thank you for recovering that lost season from the prior year. But the fact that I homeschool does not abdicate my responsibility to stand for my neighbors and dear friends who are struggling with the craziness of these times, like we all are, perhaps in some cases, different reasons. But I'm here to lend my voice on their behalf to advocate for the parents, those parents that I know, and school children in this district that are struggling. Now, I am not a public health expert, but at least I come with the perspective of 22 years in the pharmaceutical industry. I've held various technical and quality leadership positions in major pharmaceutical companies. Most applicable to this discussion is my responsibility for cross-contamination prevention during vaccine manufacturing, even viral vaccine manufacturing. But it certainly doesn't take someone with my background to come to the logical conclusion that masking children has little to no effect at preventing transmission. Additionally, as a global quality leader for biotherapeutic product development, I am paid to think critically. We apply FDA guidance, not blindly, but by applying technically sound, data-driven decision-making that is structured in a risk-based decision-making process. From my vantage point and experience, it is clear to me that we have come down on the wrong side of that equation when it comes to masking children in schools. While I would advocate for the dropping of the mandate altogether, I do realize that the board is in a tough position weighing the opinions of the district with the guidance provided by county and national experts. So I'm here not just to lend my voice to the conversation, but to inquire further on the proposed exit strategy. Specifically, I'm seeking assurance that the strategy has been pressure tested and evaluated critically for its application to Springfield Township to ensure that we understand the implications of these plans. As you know, there are two criteria that define transmission category, each transmission category. In a very basic pressure testing of the strategy, I took the approach to retrospectively apply the proposed criteria to the fall semester, looking at the Springfield Township data from the Montgomery County Data Hub. If you apply the positivity criteria, one of the two, then masking would have been optional if it applied at that time from the start of the school year until December 2nd. The rate rises to the substantial category on December 9th, thus requiring masks at that point. While not ideal, that application seems reasonable and appropriate to me. However, if we were applied the second criteria, the incident rate criteria, the children would have been masked for the entirety of the fall semester with the exception of 2 weeks in October. This would not be acceptable. The measurement must be sensitive enough to differentiate from the current spike that we're seeing from the steady state conditions we saw in the fall. So my ask is to evaluate the data yourself, to just ask to ensure that we have a robust exit strategy before approval. So finally, this is just something I read today. Anyway, the last thing I want to say is we are all image bearers of God. We struggle. We can't articulate what the problem is and why we're all struggling with this, but I please ask you to unmask these kids. Thank you.
Next is Joseph Dowling. Mr. Dowling.
Evening. I'm speaking on behalf of a friend who is an employee of the school district. Just going to read her comments. I want to start off by saying that I love working in our school district. I think we have an incredible group of teachers and support staff. I am concerned though, because I don't feel like the masks are ever going to go away. They have become an emotional safety net for adults and kids alike, even though according to science, they really do not stop the spread of the virus and are actually impeding kids' progress academically, socially, and emotionally. Elementary age kids don't know anything other than masks at school. They don't know what their teachers really look like because all they see is their eyes. The mask covers everything else. Kids in kindergarten are being taught their letters and sounds, having never seen their teacher's mouth. I remember when everyone first started wearing masks, I couldn't figure out why I had so much trouble hearing people talk. I became a really big head nodder because I didn't have the heart to keep asking people what they were saying. I realized about a couple months in that I couldn't hear because I couldn't see people's mouths. Now, imagine just learning to read and trying to learn letter sounds without seeing your teacher's lips. N and M, S and F, E, I. You don't realize until you have a mask on how similar all the sounds are. N and M are virtually impossible to hear the difference without seeing someone's mouth. We've been teaching kids to read for 2 years without them visually seeing mouths. Some teachers wear clear visors so the kids can see their mouths when they teach language arts. But if we are honest, if you're wearing a visor, you may as well be maskless in terms of protection. One of the most important things that elementary age kids learn in school is about social cues. Kids learn how to read body language and facial expressions in school. A lot of those cues are masked, literally, in the time of COVID. First of all, emotional literacy is a gateway to empathy and social connection. And now we're wearing masks. So it's harder and harder to be able to read facial expressions. Since COVID, I have noticed a sharp decrease in kids' empathy towards one another. And I attribute that to not being able to see their friends' faces at school. As I see more and more adults and kids getting used to the idea of masks for good, I worry about the long-term effects this will have on our society. What a tragedy it is that I don't get to see a child smile when they learn something new, or see their lips quiver when their feelings have been hurt. I watched as a teacher was asking her class what their New Year's wish was for 2022. For the second year in a row, every kid in the class asked for COVID to go away. As parents, teachers, and leaders in our community, it's time to shed the mask and show the kids that they are safe. We know for a fact that if we follow the science, kids have a 99.98% rate of recovery from COVID. Who are we protecting? We don't, however, have any facts on the impacts of what wearing a mask for 2 years straight or longer will have on our kids. We will never forgive ourselves if we adversely affect a generation of kids. The time is now for us to make masks optional. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Michael Parsons. Mr. Parsons.
Michael Parsons, Springfield Township. I live on Brent Road. I have some questions about the new health and safety plan. Inside the health and safety plan, there is a section on efforts to provide vaccination to school communities. And when I click on that link, it brings me to the page in the, I believe it's the CDC or the MCOPH, I guess it's all the same. And it comes to how schools can support COVID-19 vaccination. And then there are 6 different steps. So when you're going to be voting on this health and safety plan, I'm wondering if part of the health and safety plan are these 6 steps on how schools can support COVID-19 vaccination in the classrooms. Okay.
Reframe that into how you would
Okay, so
comment on that.
now, I do a lot of research. So I was researching the health and safety plan that Dr. Yannicone put up. And within that health and safety plan, there is a link among many, but one of them is how schools can support COVID-19 vaccination. And there are 6 steps. So you'll be voting on these 6 steps that our teachers are going to need to take in order to support COVID-19 vaccination. I don't think that's something that we need to vote on today, if you're not aware of this being in there. And like I said, it's a question. I just want to know if that's in that plan that you're going to be voting on. The last one, number 6, is make COVID-19 a teachable moment. I don't think we have enough facts. I mean, 2 years and we still have no idea what we're doing. I see most of you have your N95, if not all of you. I'm glad to see that, but we're 2 years too late on that one, right? It's just, this just keeps steamrolling and steamrolling. And I think we're all watching this big giant boulder roll down the hill, and it's just picking up more speed. We have the new Spartan Spotlight Equity Action Plan. That's huge thing going on. I think this COVID thing might need to take a back seat. It's really starting to put pressure on a lot of the parents. And I don't think we're not seeing the end of the tunnel here. We're not seeing the daylight. It's getting darker and darker, and this is a huge deal right here. I don't want to have to opt out of all these programs. I really don't. It's starting to it's time consuming. And that's about it. Can you go over a little bit more before you vote on the agenda for Eastern and the money that's going to be given to them? Thank you.
One comment I just want to make to provide a little bit more context. It is the responsibility of each board member when presented with a document like the health and safety plan to make sure that we're reviewing it, as well as those links out to third-party experts that would provide additional context for us to think through how the school is going to apply that. So the answer is yes, it is the knowledge of the board that there are third-party links attached to the health and safety plan.
Okay. Thank you.
That concludes the list of folks who've signed up in person for agenda items.
Great. Do we have any agenda item comments online?
Oh, I do see one hand raised. Danielle Snyderman?
Yes. Hi, I'm Danielle Snyderman Miller. You guys hear me?
We can.
Great. I live at 612 East Valley Green in Flowertown. My husband and I have two daughters, one in 8th grade and one in 4th grade. I want to speak tonight in support of the health and safety plan and make a suggestion for a delay in moving toward optional masking. Our perspectives are our lived experiences. I can only speak from mine. I understand that many others on this call in the room tonight don't share my perspective. They are living from their lived experience, and that is their truth. It's unclear to me, however, at this point in the pandemic, how every life has not been touched by COVID in some way. As a geriatrician in a nursing home full of elderly and immunocompromised patients, I can reflect back to the spring of 2020 when I got home from work every day and made sure my children knew not to hug me until I went through a decontamination process. Our children, like all of yours, have had to sacrifice a lot. At the same time, I was thankful that we as a family could discuss how this pandemic highlights we cannot make decisions that only impact ourselves. Embracing that lesson is not operating under the guise of fear, but more so under the guise of love. I embrace the philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a South African philosophy that we are only human through others, or simply put, I am because we are. Even though our children are now vaccinated, we still make choices to protect others. Our children's classmates whose parents or grandparents are immunocompromised, for classmates' siblings who are too young to be able to be vaccinated, and for the patients I serve in my nursing home setting. I'm optimistic because the modeling looks positive and Omicron does not appear to severely impact children. I also look forward to a time we will be able to be mask optional, but now is not the time to let up on universal masking policies. This surge is overwhelming hospitals. Talk to anyone in healthcare and it will break your heart. I'm less concerned that my children or your children will need to be hospitalized if they were to get COVID, but I do worry about all of our children being able to receive the care they need if they were to develop appendicitis or any other medical emergency requiring hospitalization. I wonder if there'll be enough nurses to care for them or what safety measures may be compromised because of the lack of staffing. I've heard people talk about the Central Bucks County School Board and their decisions to be mask optional. I can also share with you that there was a letter drafted and sent by the CEO of Doylestown Health requesting that the school board increase their COVID guidelines given this most recent surge because hospitals are overwhelmed. I find it disappointing that the local health system has to beg the school district to follow scientifically based guidelines. I want to thank our school board for always putting the best interest of the children and educators first, for striving to do the right thing, for following science. Thank you for your partnership with CHOP Policy Lab and the Department of Health for their evidence-based guidance. Thank you for embracing hard conversations. Thank you for understanding that it's not only important to keep children in schools, but also to do it safely and to protect community that's outside of the school walls. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next, I do see hand raised for Lauren Camper. Ms. Camper? Ms. Camper?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Lauren Camper, and I live in Orland. I am a parent leader for our Multicultural Parents Association, and on behalf of our MPA leaders, I want to lend our full support to the Equity Action Plan. Several of our MPA leaders participated in the Equitable Practices meeting last week, where we heard the actions that the district plans to take. We appreciate the district's transparency in the audit findings, the willingness to solicit parent and student input, and the actionable plan that's in place to address the gaps. MPA has been committed to doing this work for years and will continue to lend our support to the district on these efforts. And at the forefront of all of this should be and has been our children. We appreciate the resources that are already in place to support our students and teachers, but we're eager to see this more proactive approach being adapted in our near future. And finally, on a personal note, for several months, I've listened to parents talking about masks, no mask, mask, no mask, and they've been passionate doing their research and really wanting to make things fair for our children. And I really would love to see that same effort and energy be placed into the equitable practices for all the children in our district. Just imagine how far we could go if we place our efforts into that bucket. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, Ms. Casabon? Chris Casabon? Did you raise a hand? Okay.
Yes, I did. Hi.
Okay.
So I'm Chris Casabon. I live at 209 Preston Road in Flowertown. And I just wanted to say that I personally am in support of the equity, action, and health and safety plan. I know you all have been working really hard and trying to make bridges with the community. And just speaking personally, I just want to say thank you, and I'm in support of those two plans. Thanks.
I don't see any other hands raised online. I think that concludes the comments on non-agenda items. Excuse me, on agenda items. Excellent.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone for taking the time to provide those thoughtful comments. We'll jump into the business of the day. First up is approval of minutes. We're going to be approving the December 7th, 2021 reorganization board meeting and December 7th, 2021 regular board meeting. So the Board of School Directors approves these minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
A second. Any comments or questions? Ms. Green?
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Sapinski. Aye. Dr. Taratusky, Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next, we have our approval of Treasurer's Report for the months ended November 30th, 2021 and December 31st, 2021. Recommended action, the Board of School Directors approves the November 30th, 2021, December 31st, 2021 Treasurer's Report. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second.
Second.
Any comments or questions on the Treasurer's Reports? Ms. Green?
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin, Mrs. Green,
Aye.
Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Sapinski. Aye. Dr. Taratusky, Mr. Bedard.
Aye. We'll move on to some human resources. We have both personnel and HR contracts. First topic is personnel. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: administrative personnel, confidential personnel, certified personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, extra pay for extra responsibilities for 2021 and 2022, and conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second. Any comments or questions on personnel?
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Sapinski. Aye. Dr. Taratusky, Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next is a personnel addendum. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel addendum as presented in the attachment: certified personnel. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any comments or questions on the addendum? Ms. Green?
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Sapinski. Aye. Dr. Taratusky, Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next is a contractor, Delta T Group. The Board of School Directors approves the addendum to the contract with Delta T Group to provide staffing support services for the district as needed at the hourly rate listed in the attached contract effective December 1st, 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Sapinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next, we have high school independent contractors supporting the spring musical for 2022. The Board of School Directors approves the independent contractor agreements with Niall Weber and Nick Pignali for choreography and musical accompanist, the 2022 high school spring show. Is there a motion? In a second. Any comments or questions? All right, Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Slapinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next, moving on to academic affairs, we're going to review the school or vote on the school calendars, which Dr. Etlin reviewed with us earlier. The Board of School Directors approves the 2022-23, the 2023-24, and the 2024-25 school calendars as reviewed and per the attachment. Is there a motion? And a second. Any comments or questions?
I just had a quick question. The change to Thanksgiving week where we're not having the full week off in the first 2 days or half days, is that, you touched on it a little bit, is that intended just so we don't go into that third week of June? It said the survey was kind of split about that week, and so I wanted to know why, what made you decide to have those half days instead of the full week off?
Sure. It was two pieces of information we received from the community. One was that a number of families found it to be a challenge for them to have their children off for the full week as a result of their work lives. The half days were more helpful to them. And we felt that we could get the conferences done at the elementary level if we added that Friday prior to Thanksgiving half day, so that they have 3 half days to complete the elementary conferences. At the secondary level, we have fewer conferences than we do at the elementary level. The other reason was actually not to finish on time by the end of the second week of June. It was to buy the 2 snow days.
Okay.
We needed to fit in snow days because families had asked for us to not just have flexible instructional days in the event of poor weather, but also to have some snow day options. So that was the trade. 2 half days in November bought us 2 snow days in June.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question with regard, I remember that last year, possibly, at least one community member came to the meeting and had made some requests with regard to the Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, which fall in September. And I'm just wondering where the survey came in on that and if those kinds of things were considered in terms of time off for those holidays for families who celebrate.
We started to have conversations about a number of holidays, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Diwali, among others, that in some districts, the days are off. These days would carry us into the third week of June, and there seemed a very strong interest because of summer camps and work schedules, and even for our seniors, a lot of college summer sessions begin in that third week of June. So that seemed to be a much higher priority, in addition to the starting after Labor Day and the full week of spring break.
Okay.
Yeah, if we had started before Labor Day, we certainly could have added some additional days during the calendar year for various cultural holidays and religious holidays, but that did not seem to be the priority of the community. It was, yeah, after Labor Day, full spring break, get us out of here by the end of the second full week of June.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the calendars? No, sorry. We can certainly comment at the end during that comment period. Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Mr. Needleman.
I'm sorry?
Your vote on the
Oh,
calendars.
we were doing the roll call,
Yep.
so I was tying down. Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Lipinski. Aye. Dr. Taratusky, Mr. Bedard.
Aye. All right, next up is our vote for the Equity Action Plan. The Board of School Directors approves the Equity Action Plan for the 2021-22, 2022-23, and the 2023-24 school years. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Second. Any comments or questions?
Can I just make a quick comment? This word wasn't used in the presentation, but I thought the most impressive thing about the Equity Action Plan, the EAP, both in its writing and in the way it was presented, was accountability. Right, that it's not just an expression of an idea or words on paper. There are ways to hold ourselves and the district ourselves accountable for what we do, and ways to see why we fell short in some areas or did what we wanted to do in some areas or whatever. And I think that's one of the most impressive things about it. That's why it has my support.
I have a comment. I shared this the other night at the equity meeting, the equitable practices meeting, but I was at the very first equitable practices meeting with Dr. Hacker several years ago when we really started this work in earnest. And I am exceedingly proud and relieved to see that we've come this far. And I really want to congratulate Dr. Yannicone for carrying the mantle and to the administration for all the work that they have done on this equity audit, the equity plan, and the policy that's coming up. It really speaks volumes about their commitment to this and to the district. Thank you.
Very good. Other comments or questions?
I just wanted to say thank you to the administration for really transparently showing the comments and the feeling that the district had in regards to this plan. And so that's not done everywhere. And so this plan just doesn't come from University of Penn, it comes from the community, it comes from things where we need to improve. And I applaud you for taking on those areas that we need to improve and making that process forward. So thank you.
Other comments, questions? I do have one additional, in addition to my support for the overall action plan. I do want to make sure that we're very transparent about not just the progress we're making, but the trade-offs in order to make sure that we're making that progress. And so, Ms. Green, if we could capture, for even if there are implications for the budget going into next year, some of the ideas that were presented as part of the action plan would require some level of funding. Just make sure that we've accounted for it and make sure that it is identified as a priority, and if there are areas where we've had to deprioritize, that we talk about that as well. We can do that as part of the finance follow-ups. Okay, great. I think we can go to vote. Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green.
Aye.
Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Aye. Dr. Taratusky. Aye. Mr. Bernard.
Aye. Next topic is the health and safety plan. The Board of School Directors approves the revised School District of Springfield Township Health and Safety Plan effective January 18th, 2022 through June 30th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Can I just make a comment, please? I just want to point out that as we are reviewing the plan in the board, that there are links in the document that provide the context for the information. However, the right-hand column does indicate that SDST, the actions that SDST will take. So I just wanted to clarify regarding the comments that were made by Mr. Parsons earlier, that it is not the links that we're voting for. It is on the actions where it says SDST has reviewed and will follow. Those are the things that we are voting on. Is that correct? Just want to make sure that that's correct.
Yes, so the state of Pennsylvania provides the template, and that left column is the language from the state, and all those links are from the state. To the right is what we will do. That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that. Thanks.
Excellent clarification, former president. Appreciate that. Good future homework for me. Good. Other comments or questions on the revised plan?
Throw this comment out there. It's funny because I've started thinking about this well before Omicron came along. And it's like, ready to take the masks off, move on. We've got vaccinations now. Everybody in my household is vaccinated. I realize that not everybody in everybody's household is vaccinated, but I was ready to take masks off. And then, of course, Omicron came along. And so when this comes up and I'm reading that we're going to make masks optional at a certain level, it makes me nervous because, moderate sounds severe. So, we have this COVID dashboard, which I'm sure a lot of us visit, and moderate still sounds severe, but when you actually go and look at the numbers and see that moderate is 10 to 49 cases and a 5 to 7% positivity, and then when you look at what we've been going through for the last couple of weeks, we're like off the charts. It's almost as if we need new categories because moderate's not really moderate. It's a whole nother ballgame. And then we're dealing with a situation where the variant has changed and how the disease impacts people has changed. And of course, more people can be vaccinated, including all of the students that we serve in the schools. So while I'm still torn with this whole possibility of going back to a mask optional, I guess I don't know if comforted is the right word, but just looking at how that moderate section is pretty tiny and off to the side, especially compared to what we're going through now. And when we see how that actually translates to cases in our buildings. Anyway, so I am going to vote for this, even though I have some hesitations. And my kids are going to continue wearing masks, likely even when it's optional. But is what it is. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Any other comments or questions on the revised health and safety plan? Okay, Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratuski. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. All right, we're going to move on to overnight trips. We have two on the agenda. First, the high school baseball team overnight trip. The Board of School Directors approves the high school baseball team to attend an overnight trip to Fort Pierce, Florida for team building, skill development, and competition opportunities from Wednesday, March 16th, 2022 through Monday, March 22nd, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second. Any comments or questions on the high school baseball team overnight trip?
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratuski. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next is the Deca Business Club overnight trip. Board of School Directors approves the Deca Business Club to attend an overnight trip to Hershey, Pennsylvania to attend the Deca Statewide Career Development Conference and Competition, Wednesday, February 16th through Friday, February 18th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratuski. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next, under finance, is the approval of the 2022-2023 Eastern Center budget. The Board of School Directors approves the resolution for the adoption of the 2022-2023 operating budget for the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology in the amount of $11,153,300 and capital assessment of $790,000, of which the Springfield Township School District's portion of the secondary contribution is $694,077. and its share of the capital assessment is $83,268. Is there a motion?
Motion.
In a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I just have one question. Dr. Yannicone, how many students do we have attending Eastern this year?
I believe we have 54.
54. Okay.
It's a terrific program.
It
The
is.
students are, I think, very well served there. Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank
they've been
you.
growing their program.
Yes.
Other comments? I think I would love if you could just give a brief overview of the budgeting process of Eastern and how allocations are set up for the school, for partner school districts.
Sure. So, and I recall we just made a change on who was the Eastern representative from the board. So I apologize. I'm not sure which one of you it is. Oh, Dr. Etlin, thank you. So I know you've barely started your tenure in that position. So please correct me if you've learned something new recently. But Eastern, at our meetings, at our regular meetings of all the superintendents, they provide an assessment of enrollment, as well as any new program costs and new capital costs. So for example, at a recent meeting in the fall, we had a tour of their new facility for automotive technology. And it is state of the art. You would think you were walking into a plant anywhere in this country. The students are getting both the digital technology of new cars, as well as more traditional work. And so they'll explain to us and look for our permission and a vote at the county meeting, whether or not we are approving the capital improvements they would like to make. They've made a number of improvements over the last few years to bring the career and technical education programs up to current needs. We know that across the country, there are many, many jobs in the career and technical fields, and we want to encourage our students to look that way as one way to be gainfully employed after high school or college, because many of the students who attend Eastern also go on to four-year college. They'll then allocate based on our enrollment, our individual enrollment, as well as our portion of the total assessment for the districts, for all the districts in the county, and that's how they determine our allocation. And I don't know if Dr. Etlin or Ms. Green would want to clarify anything else.
No, Dr. Yannicone, you definitely have given a great summary. I just want to add that the opportunities at Eastern are just unbelievable. Their robotics, their other STEM program, computer science, engineering, nursing, and I can just go on and on. If you ever have an opportunity to tour the facility, I strongly encourage you. And their partnership, not only with the school districts, but also with Penn State, is absolutely phenomenal. So it is a well-deserved investment.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? All right, Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next up is the appointment of board treasurer. The Board of School Directors approves the appointment of Samantha Jenko as board treasurer effective January 24th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Very good. That's great. No problem.
No, I did. Sorry.
Yes, that's it.
No problem. Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski.
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next up is a subject related to Berkheimer, our tax service. The Board of School Directors approves Ms. Kara Green, Business Administrator, Ms. Samantha Jenko, Assistant Business Manager, and Stephen Kutcher, Accounting Specialist, as authorized district personnel to request and receive tax information and records from Berkheimer as outlined in the attached confidentiality resolution. Is there a motion? And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Hubley. Aye. Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Lipinski. Aye. Dr. Teratuski, Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next topic is appointment of legal services. Be it resolved that the school board of the school district of Springfield Township appoints Whistler Pearlston LLP as special counsel to provide professional legal services to the board as assigned, limited to proceedings convened pursuant to the local agency law 2 PA.C.S 551 at SEQ period, where the board and the administration must be represented by separate counsel. Such proceedings include, but are not limited to, student expulsions or other disenrollment matters. Services shall be provided at an hourly rate of $200 plus approved reimbursable expenses. It is contemplated here that the school district solicitor's office in such matters will represent the administration. Where the district's solicitor's involvement in the underlying matter before the board prevents the solicitor from representing the administration or for other appropriate bases, the above special counsel will instead represent the administration, and the district solicitor will represent the board and serve as hearing officer. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second. Any comments or questions? Actually, if we could, from our solicitor, just if you could clarify when procedurally it may be required for firms to represent the board separate from the district.
Sure. So the board serves in a number of different functions. One of those functions is what's called an adjudicatory function. So you actually are called upon to judge certain matters. In those cases, the administration is actually presenting and prosecuting the case. And so there'd be somebody on one side, the administration on the other, and then the board sitting as a neutral. And yet the board still needs advice from somebody. And if your solicitor's office at that point is representing the administration, we can't also give advice to the board because we would be deemed to be, I don't know, biased. So instead, what you do is you get special counsel to sit with the board while your solicitor would be representing the administration. It's a very limited representation. It is just for the times that these hearings are going on. And as a matter of fact, what will generally happen is that after your solicitor's office will finish presenting the case and the board makes its decision on what it wants to do, there's certain paperwork issues that need to happen as well. And at that point, your solicitor simply will change hats and become the solicitor for the whole district again.
Excellent. I thought that was a very plain spoken explanation. I appreciate that.
I have a follow-up question. So the last sentence here says that the special counsel will instead then represent the administration, and the district solicitor will represent the board and serve as hearing officer. So in that case, we would keep the current representation, and the folks that we're voting on would then represent the administration.
That is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And essentially, if there's a conflict of interest one way or the other, that the normal way that you're providing in this motion can't occur, we would switch places so that the conflict wouldn't happen in that way.
Thank you.
Good clarifying question. Any other comments or questions?
I just have a quick question of how this firm was identified for representation. It probably happened just before I joined the board, but just was curious.
This firm is well known in Montgomery County as an educational law firm. So it wasn't, it's not a very large representation, so it really wouldn't have made a lot of sense for you to do a wide search for something like this, but it is a well-known firm in this area.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe we've used them in the past for situations such as this.
Okay. Ms. Green?
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. On to our policy section. And just to foreshadow, we do have a long list of these grammatical changes, and we'll vote on that as a big bundle. But we're going to head through a list of these policies. So the first step is the 000 policies. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the following 000 policies. Policy 006, meetings, and 008, civility. Is there a motion?
Motion.
In a second.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next up is policies, the 100 policies, and this is our big bundle. I'm not going to read each title. They are published in the agenda. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the following 100 policies, which run from policy 100 through policy 146. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions? Yeah, Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next up is the 200 policies. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the following 200 policies. Policy 201, admission of students. Is there a motion?
Motion.
In a second? Any comments or questions on the 200? All right, it's great.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next up, and good work, Policy Committee, 800 policies. So we have the Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the following 800 policies. Policy 815, acceptable use of internet, computers, and network resources. Policy 816, district social media. Policy 824, maintaining professional adult-student boundaries. Is there a motion? In a second? Any comments or questions?
Would these policy also include the cybersecurity? Would the cybersecurity policy be also included in the 800?
No, it is not one of these three policies.
Okay.
These policies speak specifically to the ways in which adults and students interact over social media and what social media sites our staff may use as educational resources and in what context.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
That's a good question, Dr. Etlin, because we had talked about the cybersecurity 5-year plan, which is separate than these policies. Makes sense.
When I saw students, I was also thinking in terms of security for the students as well. So that's why I posed the question.
Totally fair. Any other comments or questions? All right, Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next up is policy 832, educational equity. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of new policy 832, educational equity. This was the policy that Dr. Yannicone reviewed as part of the equity action plan. Is there a motion? A second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All right, Ms. Green.
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etlin. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley. Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Bedard.
Aye. Next and final grouping of policies is the 900 policies for tonight. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the following 900 policies. 903, public participation in board meetings. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Mr. Needleman.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco.
Aye.
Dr. Etland. Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Lipinski.
It's gonna be a long night.
Oh, no.
Aye.
Dr. Teratuski. Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Sorry about that.
All right, we don't have any property topics for tonight, which brings us to public comment on non-agenda items. I think I want to acknowledge, I did see at least one hand come up during our meeting, and I do want to make sure, even if you didn't have a chance to sign up, I want to make sure everybody does have an opportunity to speak if you'd like to speak on non-agenda items. We'll start with the folks who were signed up.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? I wasn't not paying attention before, but I know it looked like I was an idiot, but I just was double checking. We have two, which is of course fine, but we just have two names on each list. So I was just double checking, that's all. I wasn't not paying attention. In any event, Eileen DeFranco. Mrs. DeFranco?
Our town. A friend of mine who lives in Lancaster County told me that 5 of the 9 members of their local school board found a way to cut an additional $1 million from their district's budget. Cuts in that district have already closed 2 schools and decreased staffing. While these drastic cuts might have prevented an increase in taxes, an action that the board hoped would endear them to the voters, it also ended many programs and classes that kept children engaged in school. I would suggest that even thinking about closing schools, thinking about ending programs, or cutting staff has a direct impact on both student welfare and achievement. I saw this happen in Philadelphia, where drastic cuts in 2013 led to the laying off of 100 nurses, most vice principals, many counselors, and ancillary staff, leaving most schools to be run by skeleton staffs. These cuts led directly to the death of 2 children. There was a simultaneous push from the state lawgivers to blame teachers for the low test scores that resulted from the lack of resources and personnel. I dare say that when the same thing happens in Lancaster County, the teachers will be blamed as well. Thus, paring schools back to the bone might look good on paper, but draconian measures will always have unintended consequences. In this paradigm of low taxation, the children will always be the losers. It is important for the residents of Springfield Township to always put children and not political agendas first. It is so easy to hop on the bandwagon and sing a song of low taxation. Taxation, if managed well, provides goods and services, but you only get good schools if you pay for them. My grandchildren's education here in Springfield proves to me that the money spent on students here is money well spent. Thank you.
Next in person is Jamie Bedard.
Hi, Jamie Bedard, Winmore. My husband and I have lived in Springfield for 15 years and have 2 middle schoolers in the district. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Every Town for Gun Safety states, in 2021, there were at least 187 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 42 deaths and 113 injuries nationally. In light of recent incidents involving the threat of gun violence on our school grounds, I am here tonight to highlight the topic of gun safety in the home and the steps you as the board and administration can take to help prevent gun violence. The Be Smart program is a non-political program that addresses adults for the purpose of keeping guns and ammunition secured from children. The Be Smart program is supported by the Pennsylvania chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Please visit besmartforkids.org for more information. School shootings and youth suicides by gun are preventable. We have the ability to drastically make change, and it starts in the home. The U.S. Secret Service states 76% of school shooters get guns from home or a relative. I hate to think of what could have resulted if the student who recently made threats to our school had access to a gun in his home. As a child, I had a classmate with a brother that died due to unintentionally shooting himself with a gun he had access to in the home. Unfortunately, in our own district in 2006, a Springfield student with access at home to a gun and ammunition died by gun suicide at the school. Fortunately, no one else was physically hurt. In 2012, my husband's college roommate from LaSalle had his 6-year-old daughter stolen from him in the massacre that took place at Sandy Hook Elementary School due to the shooter's access to unsecured guns in the home. While they are not the only incidents of gun violence that have touched my family, I mention these to stress the point of what unsecured access to guns in the home can mean. Since gun violence is not an everyday occurrence in seemingly idyllic communities like this one, we tend to take our safety for granted. It is much easier to keep our heads down and not address this taboo subject head on. I am requesting that the school board and administration fully embrace and implement Be Smart in our district by the following actions. 1, make it part of a formal safety and violence prevention plan. 2, send brochures home with every student at the start of each school year and make them available at appropriate events like back to school night. 3, schedule Be Smart presentations to parents annually for each school building at such times like PTA meetings. It will take the community leadership to help remove the taboo status of this critical discussion. This is absolutely no different, other than it's probably even more critical than discussing the dangers of drugs, alcohol, sex, and internet safety with parents of students. I will follow up with the board and administration with what you need to get started. Thank you.
Next up is Jeff Cornell.
My name is Jeff Cornell, Surrey Road in Orland. Some months back during a board meeting, there were some passages read aloud during public comment from books that are available in our school libraries. Since that board meeting, there have been many comments from residents voicing their opinion on the issue of books in a very broad context of banning them, rather than addressing the legitimate concerns arising from the content that was read out loud. Somehow the conversation was turned from concern about sexualization of children and normalizing sexual deviancy in the context of incest and pedophilia into accusations of wanting to ban books on the basis of non-hetero hate. The truth couldn't be more the opposite. In my opinion, the legitimate concerns parents have on content found in school libraries are rooted in the principle of parental consent and protecting the innocence of our children. It is amazing to me that people could have heard some of the things read out loud that night and had the inclination to defend it. However, this is a free country and we have the freedom of expression. Taking away people's right to print or read such things is not what I believe the intention is, but we are talking about minors here. The same minors who are the focus of countless rules and regulations which require parental consent due to their inability to be able to decide what is an acceptable risk for them. The hope in shining a light on this issue is to come to some kind of common ground where parents who are not comfortable with this material can be assured that their minor child will not be given free access to it. I'm proud to be one of those parents. Thank you.
Next up is Michael Parsons.
Mike Parsons, Orland, PA. So the lawyer thing, can I ask a question now? Yeah, okay. And questions?
In Q&A, but certainly you
Q&A,
can ask a question and we'll make sure that
So
we get back to you.
if a parent has an issue with something went on in the administration or teachers or whatnot, what counsel do they have to represent them? We have to get our own counsel? Is that correct?
Specific issue that you're
Question?
concerned about.
Yeah, but I was just wondering.
Okay.
Is that how that works?
I don't know
Basically,
the answer,
we
but
don't
again,
have
that's why we don't treat
Okay.
this as an open Q&A. I mean, we could certainly follow up with what the procedures would be, and I would imagine it's on the township website as well.
Okay. Now, so you guys voted on that health and safety plan to pass that. What can we do? What can the parents do that think that it should be optional for the masks? I mean, how do we go about this? What do you think our strategy should be to get our kids maskless? We're smart people. We understand when the numbers are going to rise and when they're going to go down. You know, my kids left the house after the break and I said, make sure you wear your mask and stay away from people because they may have COVID. My kids wearing the mask isn't going to protect them from getting it. I know my kids didn't have COVID when they went into school, but I still, told them, be careful. In 2 weeks from now, I may say, hey, you can lighten up because, we're over that hump. That same spike that happens every year, whether it's COVID, the flu, a common cold, it doesn't matter. It's the same spike all the time. Okay. It's just, it's sad when I have to look at my kids walk out with the mask on. I mean, it's really sad. It's 2 years now. I know you voted on it and I know you can pull back on some of the stuff in there. You just got to try it. You got to try. Start with the high school. Make masks optional in the high school first. See what happens. The kids might surprise you. Why don't you be surprised? Let's see what the community can do without MCOPH, because we don't need them. You don't need them.
Thank you. There's one more person with a hand raised, and then I see two online. So this one. Okay.
Yeah, just identify yourself and where you live in the district. Thank you.
Good evening, Mary Ellen Raves, Station Avenue. I heard you speak a lot tonight about the equity audit, and I just was wondering if there was a resource where maybe you could send it to me where I could find out how much that audit cost. I think you mentioned University of Pennsylvania conducted that audit. I was taking notes on my phone here, so bear with me, please. I really liked a lot of the points in the audit, and I think there's some value in it. There's some things I don't agree with. But I was very fortunate to grow up at a high school where LGBTQ awareness was very close to my heart, having a parent that died young and having members of the LGBT community be like second parents to me. So I'm happy that these discussions are happening. And it was actually a multicultural situation where I grew up. So I'm very happy that these conversations are happening at an age appropriate level. So I don't want to come here like I'm putting anything bad against equity or anything like that. But as we all know, during COVID, it's been so difficult for the students to stay and maintain their grades, and they've been struggling. And I did hear you mention in the beginning about academic assessments. I believe that was taking place in February. A meeting was going to occur. And I guess my question is to you, and I know I'm not really allowed to ask a question, but there's a lot of emphasis on equity, and I'm not discounting that some parts of the equity I think are very, very important for our students in the community. But I'm most concerned about academics, and you mentioned STEM and robotics, and especially things for women, which are just not available and certainly weren't for me when I was growing up. So I see a lot of value in academics. And you talked about academic assessments, and my question really is if these kids aren't on grade level, or they're not at their fullest potential, they're not at AP classes, if they don't meet those standards, will we take away from this equity program? Because it seems there's a lot being put into that to focus more on academics. Like I said, I grew up in a one-parent household, and I struggled to learn everything because frankly, academics weren't really something my father was able to stress. So that's where I come from always. I know I have time, and I'm only speaking for myself. I'm just saying, I think we have room for everything here. And just want to know if the kids aren't where they should be academically, what measures are going to be taken to get them to where they want to be, because we can have equity, but we're not going to necessarily have equal outcomes. But as somebody who felt like growing up, I didn't have the ability to have an equal outcome, even though I had a large support from my high school, it just was a situation in my life, but I was able to go to college and have a career. My main goal has always been the kids. And I just asked you to keep that in mind when you think about health and safety, whether you talk about social concerns, but really focusing on academics, because anyone of Black or brown color, socioeconomic status, low income socioeconomic status, if they do not have an education, we know they will never, ever get out of poverty.
That is time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do see two hands raised on mine. Keisha Bronson?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Keisha Bronson. I'm in Orland. I just wanted to reiterate a comment made in the earlier secondary HSP presentation in response to one of the public comments that on February 16th, at our next secondary HSP general body meeting, we will actually have a representative from the Be Smart program speaking to us in regards to gun safety and support and awareness in the schools and how they work with our school district. We'll also have invited members from the school district, from the mental health and counseling area, as well as from the Orland or the Springfield Police Department. So I know there was a question or a comment around Be Smart and how we could continue to support and create awareness in that area. I wanted to just encourage you to consider joining our upcoming secondary HSP general body meeting again on February 16th at 7 p.m., where we will have a speaker talk about that specific topic. And then just in general, I just want to thank Dr. Yannick and the entire board for the effort and diligence that was put into the development of both the health and safety and equitable plan. And please know that you have full support from many individuals who may not be on this meeting, but do appreciate all the effort that's been put forward on behalf of the students. Thank you.
I see also hands raised from Madeline and Julian Watson.
Hello.
Mrs. Watson?
Hi. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for everyone who participated tonight. I was really taken back. I don't recall who said it. I'd have to go back, but someone said that that you guys don't believe in meritocracy. You believe in equal outcomes. That's very concerning to me. I mean, even children from the same parents, same socioeconomic background, same schools, they don't have equal outcomes. Every child is different. Equal opportunities, yes, not equal outcomes ever. It's literally impossible. Saying that you don't believe in a meritocracy is basically saying that you believe in mediocrity, because that just means that you want to take the kids that are excelling in advanced classes and bring them down to make the other children look better, or have better grades or meet whatever standards that it is. And that, I mean, we're 25th in the world in education right now. And I don't understand where you spend so much time with equity and all of these things. We're not in Philadelphia. We live in a nice neighborhood. Most people can't even afford to purchase a house in this neighborhood. And I just don't, I mean, I understand. I want anybody who needs help to get the help that they need, but no one in this neighborhood is poor. It's impossible.
That's 1 minute.
I'm sorry.
That's 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. Also, I heard a few people speak about the masking and COVID and all of the health and safety plan, and I just wanted, again, I did this about 9 months ago. I just wanted to let those people know that it's not the school board's choice. They, on the top of it says ESSER2. And when they applied for those grants, this school board, you guys signed away and agreed to accept just shy of $2 million that you would enforce universal masking. So everybody's begging and begging to let parents have the choice. If they want to keep their kids in a mask or a bubble, or they don't, you guys already solidified that and wrote a contract that said not only will you enforce universal masking, but you also signed a contract that said that you were going to purchase DEI and CRT, CASEL, second step, whatever it is. So I just want those parents to know that you guys don't have that choice. You already signed our kids away.
Mrs. Watson?
That is time.
Could you just do me a favor procedurally? It's required that you give your name and where you live in the.
Madeline Watson, Winmore. I have 3 children in the district.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I see 2 more hands raised. Laura Vididarga.
Hi, this is Laura Vididarga. I live in Winmore. I just wanted to thank you all for all the hard work with the equitable practice plan. It looks great. I'm really happy to see that. I really appreciate the transparency and effort that was put into this. And many, many, many people in this community support you. They might not be on the call, but many, many people support you. I also appreciate all the hard work and diligence you've put into the health and safety measures. I know that it's not an easy thing. I definitely would not want to be in your shoes right now. And I know you're working hard to make sure that that as a community we're safe and that our children are safe and the people that come into contact with our children are safe. And I know that you have the best intentions for all of us. So I just want to say thank you and good job with all of this.
Thank you. I see Mrs. Parsons, Joan Parsons. Mrs. Parsons.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yes, Joan Parsons in Orland. Thanks for taking my call. The previous woman, Watson, that spoke about the $2 million, is that true? Is that true that a grant was given to the school if you followed the mask mandates?
No, the comment was erroneous, but that's one of the reasons why we don't open this up for a Q&A or debate.
Okay.
It was also probably important to note, it is erroneous to think that our community does not have a full spectrum of socioeconomic status. And we do need to care for our community members that fall below particular levels of income.
I was just basically about the $2 million, the grant money for the mask. I previously just got COVID, and as being a mask person, and also seeing all the people in our township that have been masked for the last 2 years, including the children in the school districts, we still seem to have COVID spiking up and down, Omicron or whatever. I wanted to make a comment about my recent visit to the Abington Hospital. I was told that the 15-minute rapid tests are not honored at most doctors' offices or for the hospital. They said they're not accurate. And my question was, when I spoke to my provider, I couldn't get in to see my provider. They said, wait 10 days. If you're still sick, go to the emergency room. I think a lot of people need to understand what is actually going on in the emergency rooms. You have 9-hour wait. They will triage you. They will see if you've improved a little. They'll see how your cough is. And then sometimes they want to try and see, people walked out. I actually saw people say, I've had enough of this. I only have a cough or a cold and I'm out of here. And I think a lot of people have to understand that when you go to the emergency, a lot of people are going out of fear. And they're going out of fear. But everybody in the community and all over for the last 2 years have been wearing masks. If masks really did work, the COVID should be gone by now, and it's not. So my views on the children being masked is the fact that if you don't try it for a month to see if there's any kind of, let the high school students, decide if they want to, if they're not going to wear the mask for a week or they're not sick or whatever. But when the kids leave the school and then they go out and they're playing in the community and go into the sports, what really are you protecting? Because it's a little particle of a COVID that gets into your lungs that can cause it. So it just doesn't seem to make sense after almost 2.5 years that the mask that we've all been wearing and everybody has been doing hasn't really worked. I mean, it's you can see it. It's common sense. Everybody has gotten COVID, practically everybody. That's all I would like to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Lauren Camper.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to make a comment in regards to our children having access to honors and AP courses. Because I've sat in on these equitable practices meetings since Dr. Hacker started this several years ago, I know the work that our teachers and administrators have thoughtfully put into place to level this playing field. Historically, teachers were selecting students to have access to those courses. And what some parents did not know, like myself, was that we could recommend our children for those classes. And while my older son was placed on grade level for math, the subsequent year, I recommended and asked that he be placed in a higher math class. I got the support from his new teacher, and Mr. Fuller made the adjustment immediately, and my son thrived in that classroom. When we talk about having equal access and opportunity, it's things like that, because not all parents knew that they could speak up and advocate for their children to have that access. And what our district has thoughtfully done is made sure that parents know that they can do this. And also children are being seen in their class and selected by those teachers who are children of color so that they are put in those opportunities and have the opportunities for enrichment. So I think it's very ignorant to make a comment saying that we are going to lower our children who are already in those classes or dumb them down in any type of way just to level the playing field, because that is not the work that's been done. And I would encourage any parent who has questions about that to ask. And instead of just simply speaking up at these meetings, do the work outside these meetings to make sure that you're thoroughly educating yourselves. Thank you.
Madeline and Julian Watson, raised hand again.
Yeah, and Ms. Watson,
Yeah.
residents are limited to one comment per section here.
Okay, I just want to say, I have the application. This is the second time I was called a liar about the ESSER2 funds. I would like for you to release your application to the public because you did do this and I am not lying. I have a copy of it.
Thank you, Ms. Watson.
Angelina Banks is next.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Happy New Year. It's very intense meeting. A lot of things were covered. So I'll try to get out what I want to make a comment on. I've spoken out several times against universal masking in the schools. As a mother of children myself, one with sensory issues, I know just how important it has been for me to keep her home in a mask-free environment to ensure that we are not having any type of extra developmental delays with how she's processing speech and sound. We know that CDC Director Walensky came out December and said that cloth masks were essentially useless. We just voted to keep up a health and safety plan that keeps masking, but we didn't touch upon the masks. So we know that fabric coverings are ineffective, said so by CDC Director Walensky. We know that surgical masks offer little to no protection, and that the CDC's current recommendation is to have properly fitted N95 or KN95 masks. So will the school be fitting students properly for that? Or are we still allowing cloth masks and surgical masks which we know are ineffective. Because if so, at this point, then we're essentially engaging in theater. Now, if it's an issue of accessibility or a financial thing, then I'm sure the school can allocate funds to have the children properly fitted, or I would hope so. Next, moving on, while I know that the equity action plan is something that a lot of us hold near and dear to our hearts, and I commend those who worked really hard on it. I know it's been a year plus. Actually, it's been an over 8-year process through many hands and many administrations and many boards. And I do commend you because your commitment to ensuring equal access and
that's one that
trying to level the playing field. I have a little bit of time left, thank you, is commendable. My question is, at the beginning of the school year, we did touch upon our academic gaps. And I know that we have an academic report coming out shortly. And I know that COVID-19 through virtual learning for 1 year and masked teaching for another year has severely impacted our numbers. And so I would just like a commitment or some sort of something that makes me feel a little bit more positive from the board that we're going to spend as much time and effort trying to close the COVID educational gaps that we are trying to close the equity educational gaps. Because COVID in the last 2 years has impacted us much more or almost equally than some of the equitable disparities that those in our township have been affected by. And I just hope to see in the future that we are trying to mend all gaps, not just equity, but also our academic and learning gaps. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, and this looks like the last hand raised, is BJ Watson. BJ Watson, unmute.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Brooke. I live in Orland. I have 2 kids in the school district. And I would like to say what Miss Watson, Madeline, and Julian said earlier is definitely true. And we would like it to be released to all parents, please, in an email or sent home somehow, because you guys are withholding information that is super important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. I don't see any other hands raised. Great. Anyone on the board care to comment or provide any questions? Great. Great job hanging in, everybody. Just have some procedural stuff to close out the meeting. Our future meeting dates. There's an interim board meeting has been canceled on February 1st, but we'll have a regular board meeting on Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. This is a hybrid meeting. Future committee meeting dates. Policy committee meeting on Wednesday, January 26th, 2022 at 8 a.m. All of these meetings are open to the public. Property committee meeting Thursday, February 3rd, 2022 at 8 a.m. Academic Affairs Committee meeting Monday, February 7th, 2022 at 5 p.m. And a Finance Committee meeting Thursday, February 10th, 2022 at 8 a.m. All the full details are available on the district website. I just want to say in closing, I do appreciate so much energy and attention to these important matters, health and safety plan, equity plan, all the details within the presentations from our committees and the impassioned comments from the public. I appreciate everyone being here and being engaged in the school district. That's it for this evening. And again, we'll re-adjourn on February 15th. Thank you.